Hello and welcome to poly-innovator. This is the now page update for September 2023. Now, it feels really weird to make this because I don't remember doing much last month for this. I think in July even, I just made a 3-minute video and called it a day. So, ironically though, this one's going to be a bit longer. And the reason being is that a lot happened last month. And so I kind of want to tell the story because I kind of skimmed over this in the post because I was already so much that I was typing out that I was like, okay, I can't really tell the full story. Plus, I'm better at articulating verbally. Roll the intro. Welcome back. So, basically, around halfway through last month, I was on Twitter. One of the companies I'm partnered with, Riverside.fm, had a tweet saying, hey, reply to this and you'll get entered a chance to win in this contest for a free ticket to Podcast Movement, which is the world's biggest podcast conference. I will be honest, I had not heard of it beforehand, but I also had not really looked into any conferences. Part of the reason why I want to move to Austin is so I can participate in more conferences. And so I was really excited about it, but I was just kind of like, okay, let's just do it. Well, lo and behold, a few days later, I get a DM from them. Someone who I knew in the company DM'd me, was like, hey, check your email. Because she had emailed me saying that I had won. Now, I don't know if I was just one of the few people who did it, or they did it because I was partnered with them. I don't get it, but I was one of the few people who responded, so I'm glad I was able to win. And so that led to a new problem though, because it only paid for the ticket of the conference, which is $500. So that's a great deal. But how do I get there? It turns out it was in Denver, really pretty. It's over a state away, but it's still pretty far. But how do I get there? Where do I stay? How do I get from where I'm staying to the place? Because there's no way in heck I can afford the venue. The venue itself, if you paid for the hotel there, it's $500 a night. It's like, not doing that. Even the other hotels around the corner, which I say around the corner, Denver is a huge area. So around the corner means like a 15-minute drive. You can get halfway across my city in 15 minutes, essentially. But that was still like $160 a night, something like that on average, if not a little bit more, a little bit, tiny bit less. And then when you go a little bit less, you go really less quality. And so I was thinking, okay, I can't afford a hotel. I can't really afford any of this because my income this summer has come from swim lessons and karaoke, and both of which are not reliable income for one. And on top of that, I might get paid well for both of those jobs, but I don't work enough hours. So karaoke is more of a sub situation, so whenever he needs me, I'll do it. And then swimming actually ends this weekend, so I can't actually do much with that anyways. But even then, I get paid up front, and so I just hadn't had a need for a new swim lesson cycle. And so my income was not going to be able to handle an expenditure such as a big trip. But I was talking to my aunt, and she was telling me how just by trying to figure out how to make this happen, that would be good for me to escape my current mindset. So my current level of thinking. I don't have a scarcity mindset, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. I was thinking in an abundance, like, if I had the money, how would I do it? And so I came from that approach, and I think that's super helpful, and it's a good lesson for other people to do as well. So that way, if you ever feel like a situation like this occurs for you, take that abundance mindset. Don't think about not having enough money. Try to figure out how, if you had the money, how would you do it? And while I agreed with her sentiment and I kind of adopted it for an hour or two, after our call, something in me just clicked. I was like, no, I'm making this happen. Not only is there half a dozen people who I had met in the podcast world by being on their show or them being on my show or both that were going to be there, and I was going to be able to interact with in person for the first time. There was a lot of things I could learn a lot, but more importantly, I could network with so many people. I've never been around creators like me. It's something that I just never had a chance to do. Now, ironically, and I've only mentioned this a couple of times last week to people, but I'm not necessarily just a podcaster. I'm more of a blogger than I am a video creator or a podcaster. I'm all three. And it's kind of hard to explain to people who are more technically audio-video focused, right? They're used to making podcasts. They're not necessarily used to making blog posts, which is where I come from. I made this now page as a blog post before I made it into a video, because that's just where my brain naturally goes. But the podcast is my second biggest kind of thing. It's one of my most consistent series that I do, and on top of that, it is something that's very important to me. So I am a podcaster too. I get there, and I managed to get there just in time to collect my badge on the first day, the pre-conference day. Monday's the pre-conference, Tuesday's the first day, Wednesday's the main day, and then Thursday's the post day, where a lot of people are already gone. Not many people showed up on the Monday. They showed up on Tuesday morning. Some even showed up on just the main day itself on Wednesday, which is kind of surprising to me, but I get it. Maybe they just want to maximize their time, or maybe they're just coming for their own panel or something like that. I came in that night, and each day had its own after party, which was really nice. And while I don't really care too much for drinking, I did participate because free booze. Like, I thought that was good. I was the first one in line, so they gave me a free ticket for a drink. It's like, okay, you know what? I'll drink. But I do think that social lubrication helped a little bit, because I met more people that first night than I did the whole next day. It was crazy because everyone was full of energy. They hadn't had the energy sucked out from being at an expo for 2 days straight, and so it was just really great. Actually, the Tuesday night party was almost a bit more mediocre in comparison. And the first day of the expo, I go to some panels, go to the keynotes. I realized pretty quickly that most of the information shared on these keynotes and these panels were kind of low-hanging fruit, or in my vision, they were low-hanging fruit. They might have been medium-hanging, so for some people, they were very, very helpful. And for new podcasters, all of them would be helpful. But for someone who's been at space for 6 years and has taught other people about a lot of this stuff, I basically knew most of what they were going to talk about going in. And so I didn't really learn much from that, so I focused mainly on just interacting with people and networking as much as possible. On my little app for the conference, you could just keep scrolling through my contacts. I met so many people in that time span. And I'm not necessarily bragging, but I'm kind of bragging. On Wednesday, it was really interesting too, because that was the main day. A lot more things happened that day. But that evening, there was the biggest party of the year, because they have other conferences as well for this group, the Podcast Movement group. And this is the biggest party of all the parties for all of the conferences. So I was like, I definitely have to go to that. I dressed up. I met a lot of people. I tried doing my normal social butterfly thing, but there were so many people wall-to-wall packed that I had to anchor down more, which is probably a good thing. I ended up having a nice heart-to-heart, deep conversation with a CEO, and he was really helping me kind of think through, like, what's my plan, where am I going? And that was really nice. I ended up talking with some really cool people that night too. And then the next day, Thursday rolled around. I had not gotten any sleep that night. Whether it was good or bad, it doesn't matter. I didn't get any good sleep. And I also was hungover a little bit as well, which didn't help. And then just, more importantly, just exhausted from the 3 days of just talking to so many people and moving around so much. Not only that, Denver is really dry and high in altitude, and so my body just was not used to that change, because I'm used to from a pretty humid environment. It's weird because we don't really have any rivers or big water sources nearby, but my city is pretty humid, especially when I left. You can almost hear it in my voice too, because I'm still dealing with allergies and something else. And so it's really crazy to think about how, like, between the humidity, the lack of humidity, so just the dry air, it's drying me out already. I'm trying to drink enough water, but I just can't keep up with it. The elevation, which also changes your alcohol tolerance as well, which I found out the hard way. And then on top of that, the lack of sleep, the pure exhaustion of just talking to so many people. I like people. I'm more of an extrovert than I am introvert, but I am an ambivert. I am both. I do lean to both. As much as I love talking to people, there was just so many conversations, and so I was definitely burned out socially. So physically, mentally, and then at this point, emotionally, just socially exhausted as well. At least at that point, there was no more conference. There was a couple more panels. I tried to attend one for a friend, but I was so tired. I was having a hard time focusing. And it was interesting because whenever I got done with that day, I managed to go spend time with family who I hadn't seen in over a decade, and that was a really great experience. I was a walking zombie. I felt so bad because my family was trying to talk to me, and I'm literally about to pass out. And so they were very, very gracious and taking care of me, and I took a nap, woke up, had a great conversation with them that night, and ended up having some soup, which is always good for the soul, you know. And then the next morning, having more conversation with them until we had to go drop me off at the airport. And I wish I had more time with them, but obviously it was a very short trip, and I barely made it happen in the first place. But hopefully I'll be able to make another trip out there just to spend time with them. Other than that, I came back not feeling well. And I was like, okay, you know, I need to recover after a long trip, and it might have been a short trip in the matter of days, but it was a very dense amount of days. And it was interesting because I felt kind of off. I thought maybe it was the allergies returning, because that were definitely hitting me hard when I left. Or maybe I just caught a cold or something like that. I did touch a lot of, hands, talking to people, shaking hands, that kind of thing. Perhaps I got some germs. Well, it turns out it was a lot worse than I thought. So Saturday I didn't feel that great, but I, take some Gator Light and hydrated myself, went to karaoke work, did that fine. Didn't drink, obviously, because I was just dehydrated enough as it is. And then Sunday, not feeling great. Monday, not feeling great at all. And by the time evening comes around, I'm trying to go to sleep. I end up getting the fever chills for a few minutes, and that was really weird. And I managed to stave that off being under the blanket. I go to sleep, and throughout the entire night, I'm tossing and turning. I get more and more in pain, and I don't know why. And I wake up every couple hours to go just pee a ton in the bathroom. I don't need to give too many details, but I was dying to go to the bathroom, dying to get some water. I was dehydrated. It's like crazy. And then around 5 a.m., I'm tossing and turning from the pain, because basically from my shoulder down to my oblique, it was hurting. So right here in the oblique area, right here in the rib cage especially, and in my shoulder especially. And now this is where I broke my bone when I was in junior high. So I wonder if that makes a difference as well. And it was crazy because I don't have health insurance. I've never had a job that has provided me health insurance, and I can't necessarily afford it myself. At least I haven't found a way to do so. But I'm sitting there at 5 o'clock in the morning, just in agony, basically curled up. And I realized I have to go to the hospital. I have to do something about this because something's not right. I haven't felt this way since I had appendicitis back when I was a teenager, which is the last time I went to the hospital. And something was wrong. I was literally laying on the floor, not this apartment obviously, but I was literally laying on the floor and just in agony. And it felt similar to that. I get to the ER, and I'm the only one there, but basically they start scanning me in, and I'm kind of like still trepidation around not having, a way to pay. But they're just like, hey, we just got to get you in. We'll get the doctor to see you. It's fine. And by the time the doctor comes to see me, I am just drenched in sweat, keeled over in basically near fetal position, just holding my side in pain, agony. And I told the doctor and nurses it was like a 6 or 7 out of 10, but in reality it's probably closer to an 8. It's probably just me downplaying my own, pain, which sounds about right considering how I think. But I remember the doctor telling me later on, me and my mom who had showed up, he was saying how when I first saw you, you were just drenched in sweat and like you could see it in your eyes. And so it's good to have someone who noticed that, because I felt very self-conscious about it despite the fact I knew I needed to be there. And they were worried it could have been a collapsed lung, it could have been blood clots. That was the main concern, about it being a blood clot. And even for someone at my age, that's still a possibility. And it turns out it wasn't those two things, which is good. It was the better of the 3 options, lobar pneumonia, as it turns out, which pneumonia for a 28-year-old is very, very rare. And he was kind of astounded that I had it. But given the fact that I was extremely stressed last week and I got down, broke into my breaking points, it was weird. I haven't been that stressed in a tremendously long amount of time, and I had no way of decompressing that week either. I had no time to, play around on my computer. Maybe I should have done that in the evenings, something like that. I didn't do anything to really relax. I kind of just kept going. And so I know for a fact now in the future I need to make sure I do some decompression. Or I can't give myself time to do it too. But I think that because I was so just top level stress in so many different areas, that it just weakened my immune system, and by the time I got back, it hit me hard. I mean, I did travel in the air to a different state. That could make a big difference too. But he gave me some medicine, and he sent me on my way, and I'm feeling better today. But yesterday and today, I'm just exhausted. I think my body's finally catching up on the tiredness, because for some reason, Wednesday and Thursday, I was fine. I felt a lot better. And I actually had a decent amount of energy, but yesterday and today, I actually didn't get this done on the 1st because I just didn't have the energy to work on it. I had no mental energy, especially. It doesn't help that I'm not supposed to drink dairy or have consumed dairy with the antibiotics, and so I'm not able to get my normal amount of caffeine because I have to have some kind of creamer in my coffee. And so it's just one of those things where perhaps it was the caffeine, perhaps it was just a pure fatigue, I don't know, but now I'm trying to work on this, and yeah. Okay, that was the past. So what's happening now? It's been I don't know even how long at this point, but 14 minutes. Well, damn, this is gonna be a longer episode. I haven't done a now page that was long for a while, so that's okay. I'm catching up on that. This last month was crazy. That was only the last couple weeks too, mind you, or the last week and a half or so. And even just the couple weeks before that, I was definitely working on a lot of content. And I realized after the podcast movement that the polycast needs to be adjusted a little bit. And it's not the fact that I did anything wrong with it. It's not the fact that I need to change anything per se, but I should change in order to grow. I need to simplify it. There are interviews and there are fireside micro polycasts. Micro, because there were 3 to 9 minutes, which honestly, I might have to change that. Maybe it's just a fireside polycast or something like that. I don't know, because I decided that any solo cast is going to be categorized as this, basically, the fireside micro polycast, because even if it's 30 minutes, it's still micro compared to the hour and a half long interview videos that these take up. And even if it's the first interview or the round 2 or the triple threat interview, they're still categorized as interviews, basically. And so having those two distinctions, I think, is going to help a lot. I do believe in having more options, like having more than one series on your podcast feed, because I think a lot of people make the mistake of just having just one type, and it's very monotonous and stale. Whereas if you have multiple links, then someone can hear from you without having to spend a ton of time with you if they don't have the time to do so, and that way you stay in their radar. So that's why I like having the fireside micro stuff, because then people can just come hear me speak and hear the ideas without having to sit there for an hour and a half, or if you sped it up, even an hour, to the longer form interviews. But that leaves the poly content, because that can be anywhere between 50 to 30 minutes, and I had it in there, but I was so inconsistent with it that it just didn't really help very much, and it kind of just felt out of place. And while I do want to be more consistent with it, I'd rather do it daily. I still want to do that daily. It's weird because even doing it once a week has been hard for me to do. But I think if I can do it daily, then I can create way more content. Ironically, now I have enough series where I have different series for different days, which when I created the poly content, I didn't have that yet. And so maybe I don't need to do it daily. Even if I just do it weekly, that'll still be good. And that's still 52 a year kind of thing. But I still want to catch up, because there's a lot of content on my poly content plan, my goals for that over the course of time, I'll have different series and ideas set in place that I can then turn into different things, such as Ikigai, or how to be an influencer, or how to build a computer. These series that I've wanted to talk about for a while, they're down the ways on the list a little bit. And so by having poly content on its own path, it'll show that it's one of those things where it's like, okay, there's a trajectory. It may not be all the same topic. That's the whole point. It's not about the topic, it's about the strategy behind it. And so it's still kind of out of place in the polycast. And so I think that'll be a good idea in order to separate things. I don't think I'll delete the poly content from the previous polycast seasons, because I think that will just mess up the order of things. But I might repost those in the new feed, so that way I have some kind of background in there as well. And that'll be pretty easy to do, because it's just audio files. So that's the audio stuff. Video-wise, I have a lot of ideas when it comes to poly content, so that's going to be more videos to come out. I also have a ton of clips I need to schedule out today, actually, especially for all the polycast stuff. And I'm really excited to catch up on those, because I have like 1,200 clips. I don't know if I've said this on my channel yet, but I have over 1,200 clips that I've built out with Opus, which is why I became their brand partner. I was like their biggest power user. And they were part of the reason why I was able to make the trip happen. They paid for my plane tickets to get to POLYCASTS movement. So I'm really grateful to them and Riverside for helping me make that happen, because that's not something I thought would even be possible anytime soon in my creator journey. And the fact that it happened this quickly allows me to level up quicker. Same with the interviews. Because of 2020, it was an external circumstance. It allowed me to do interviews a lot quicker than I thought in my trajectory. Now that I've been to podcast movement, now I might be able to do speaking way more easily. I've only done one speaking gig, and that was remote, and that was a 5-minute thing. Whereas these keynotes or breakouts are more like 20, 30 minutes. It'd be really great to be able to actually talk to a panel or to people in that greater, longer format. So I'm excited for that. And so in the future, coming up, obviously those keynotes might be, like around the corner. I'm really excited to hopefully move to Austin at some point. I might have to wait till my lease ends next summer, but that's okay. I'm setting the stones for it. This is my first solo trip, and now I can take another one down to Austin. It'll be a lot easier because I know what to do. And now that I have Airbnb, I can probably use that as well. And it's crazy to me, because after all this time, after all these, now page updates, this is one of the longest ones, because there's so much that's happened. And I feel like I am the weakest right now compared to what I've been in the past, and I've needed a fire under my butt. All this year, I've been procrastinating and postponing. Like, I haven't done poly content all year, basically, and it's ridiculous. I managed to at least stay somewhat consistent with the polycast stuff, but only the interviews. I haven't really done many micro polycasts either, and it's so frustrating to me, because those are easy to make. It's not like I have to go that hard to do it. But I think with these new changes, it's going to simplify things more, and I'll hopefully be able to restart the gaming channel as well. I still haven't finished the State of Decay series. That's something I need to work on as well. So it's a lot of frustration there. I'm inconsistent, but I think it's a lack of energy and a lack of drive and focus. And I think I'm getting that back. Maybe not the energy just yet, but the drive and focus, yes. And energy will come back once my fatigue and sickness goes away. And I think now that I went to the movement as well, it gave me a little bit more motivation, because I've been lacking motivation for a couple of years now. Gary Vee no longer does it for me, and no other creator really does it for me either. And it's not like I can really thrive on that. I'm at the point as a creator where those big name creators don't motivate me anymore, which is good, because that means I leveled up, but also it's like, where do I find that motivation to do things? Well, motivation's kind of crap. You have to just make systems and create it. And now I'm changing my systems to make them easier, and again, it'll help. All right, I'm going to end that there. But thank you for listening. Hopefully this was a good episode for you, a good update to my life. And who knows, maybe 20 years from now I'll be looking back on this and like, I remember that trip. All right, bye.